So as I've been going through I remember when I posted earlier about the eighth house fears and how I personally have been going through it, and things have come up again. Like one of them was about, like, to be honest, like cannibalism, because I was doing some research on, not really research, more like, I don't know, I got curious about it, like in terms of what's, like, why. So I guess maybe I got a little too much into it and it kind of started bringing up fears. But then I realized that when I was going through it, I was like, okay, well, I let it be. I just sat with it and I really, like, sat with it. And then I did some shadow work, which was to kind of figure out, not to figure, yeah, what the unconscious behaviors are and beliefs behind all that. And it kind of, I kind of processed it and it was like, why would someone go through that? Not only because they're unconscious, but more like, what is their belief in behind it? Like, I looked it up and apparently many of them would have these it's very unconscious, it's very dark, because and it's rationalized as something like, oh, it's a kind of fun and all that stuff. But in reality, many of the people, like, you have TV shows like Santa Clarita Diet, but that's like using humor, dark humor, to process the whole thing. But the act itself stems a lot from, I don't know, I would say this deluded belief that when we want to consume part of someone, it is because we believe that part of them is, we're afraid that we lose them. It's almost like we're afraid. I read up on this, some cultures where apparently the blog or the post, whatever it was that they are mortified of, what do you call this, burying their loved ones. So what they do is, after they die, they have a ceremony and all that stuff. And so it's just like, okay, so that's a form of acceptance. And when it becomes a culture, especially in certain, like, there's like little parts of the world that still do it, not just that way, but in other things like general, like cannibalism, it can be quite unnerving and very, well, actually traumatic for people who don't agree with that, and people who come, probably maybe are born into that kind of culture, and they're like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, why? Right? So they know that the energy is negative. They know that the energy is low. It's very, right? So it made me process the whole thing, and I realized that fear really is in this inherent belief that you're separated, that you are so special. It is the ego. It is the ego. Fear is basically the ego, but fear is part of, I would say, a manifestation of an ego that doesn't know how to work with the higher self. So in other words, it's separated. That's what it is, right? So I took some notes here. And any form of violence, that's kind of thing, because sometimes, like, these in the past, especially in the past, such things were done. Cannibalism usually is a last minute. It's a resort. What is it? Last minute resort. It's for survival. So you pick on things that are dead already. So you eat up the dead. So basically, it's kind of similar to like when you kill an animal or you harvest things for energy. You believe that it's dead. There's this belief that it's dead. It's not moving, because there's something about life and energy and movement that if you keep that, it's like it's a mirror of your own life. It's a mirror of your own being. It's a mirror of your own energy, of like purpose and doing and being. But when we extinguish that, that's where it's like there's that. That's why we feel most of us, especially who are aware of this, we have this sort of like, there's a sort of like this, the cord to life feels like it's been like injured. That's why it is harm, right? So, so when we do any sort of harm or violence in any form whatsoever, could be war, could be hurting someone, could just be words as well, specifically violence, I took notes here and I said, it's getting rid of an aspect of yourself. Because you're mirroring, they mirror you, you mirror them, right? And because getting rid of your aspect of yourself that you believe to be separate from the whole, but in turn that behavior is separate itself, right? Of the whole, me versus you. Going back into that theme, that was like, it can be quite traumatic feel. I believe I also have this feeling because it's like in a past life. I looked at my chart and I was like, oh, Hadar. And I know some of you probably have seen the videos that I posted about. It's not about Hadar, but I brought it in, or it's like there's a fixed star called, I forgot what fixed star it's called, something like with an A or something like that. I don't know. But it's Hadar. The planet Hadar in the constellation Sagittarius? I don't remember, but it's there's this fear of like, for me especially, it's in my 4th house, this fear of security, of like past life, of the trauma that's brought in. And I'm pretty sure that if I did a QHHT session, that part of that might come up. It might come up, I'm not sure. I haven't done one. I'd love to do one. So anyways, I discovered that we eat of things usually dead or living. There's people who have cultures like they eat, they can eat worms, live worms, or it's basically the same thing, right? In order to get energy, right? We do that to survive, to get energy, because instinctively it is required. But it also means that inherently, because you consume, so we eat to live, we eat to have energy. And it's become also this other thing, like there's an intimacy with what we eat. There's an intimacy with putting something in our mouth. That's why oral sex is also kind of very similar. There's this intimacy that is very, very, very vulnerable. It's very intimate, right? So that there's belief that we don't get that energy, whether it's actual material energy, physical energy, or the act of it, putting it in sort of, so there's this belief, this subconscious belief that anything that goes into the mouth is that consumption. It's that getting of the energy. So it feeds us. It's a nourishing energy, right? But if we don't get that, the underlying belief is that if we don't get that, we die. In other words, we die, or literally we die. Like we don't, there's that fear behind it. It's kind of like we need to have that. That's why sex can be addictive. Sex can be sort of, there's this intimacy, there's this nourishment that we get from sex. And so that is the belief that because we identify with form, mostly as humans, especially growing up, we're conditioned. When we're toddlers, we don't have that. But when we're conditioned, we start to believe that we identify with form. It means that we start to believe, and we believe that we're separate from the whole. Again, separation, incomplete. So the other things are examples like healing, medicine, or things that we just want to solve right away, any sort of pain. We look for those kind of solution to heal, to go through that, and to get better, because we're afraid of that uncomfortable feeling. It's tied to, for me, it's tied to fear, it's tied to death, it's tied to the loss of identity, that if we don't have that healing, it's like, that's it, right? So it could be trauma, it could be abuse, it could be simple things like someone swore at you, someone, whatever it is, it's that feeling. It's all connected, right? So they were afraid of dying. So it's the inherent belief that, again, the body, or body identification, is from a belief that we're separate from the whole. Again, incomplete. So it goes back to the whole thing. So I came to this, I was doing this my breathing session, but it came to me as I was doing this, and I was like, okay, it's interesting. It all comes down to the conditioned belief that the form is what we are, who we are. So incomplete, separate. Although we don't believe that, right? And that's why we do things, see things, feel things out of the belief that we do look for and seek completion simply because we believe that we're incomplete in the first place. So it's paradoxical, it's ironic, right? It's silly. It's like we do things to complete ourselves because we believe in. It's very much similar to the draconian energies of highly narcissistic individuals. They could be draconian, but mostly it is tied to that. But not all draconians, of course. Keep that in mind. Again, for those though who don't know what that is, if you looked up fixed stars, if you looked up galactic stuff, galactic family, our history, it's bigger than what we know it is. Look, Dolores Cannon, look up any of the stuff. There's a channel called Gaia. It's all connected to that. Okay. So what came to me also today is this practice and intention that yes, there's shadow work. And yes, shadow work helps a lot because it's a good start, because it's like you're starting from the talkative human. We're using words and concepts to process the emotions, to process the grief, process the trauma, all those things, by looking deep inside. But it also works with when we practice gratitude, right? Through sitting with the energies we feel, all of it. Right? Very heavy energy, I can feel it, but it's like more like it's coming to a resolution for me. So gratitude lifts up the energy, right? We want to be elevated. I'm going to go into something else after this one because I wanted to kind of tie this into why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if you know Aaron Doughty, great. If you don't, that's totally fine. Look him up, Aaron Doughty, Aaron Doughty, like Doughty. He said something like, along the lines of like acknowledging but not accepting. So any sort of form of behavior that somebody does is unconscious. We don't accept that, but we do acknowledge the fact and we accept that they're unconscious. Same thing with ourselves. It's compassion. We start with ourselves though, right? It's compassion, having compassion and empathy towards ourselves. Like, why am I doing this? So this is where shadow work comes in. It's like, you finding the gifts. But when we say finding the gifts, when I say that before, it means that you're trying to look for compassion, or you're allowing compassion to feel like, okay, because that's one of the forms of, or I guess one of the expressions of, or it leads to forgiveness, right? But even Aaron Doughty says, like, according to what he also rooted, he also based it off of what Eckhart Tolle said, that you don't need to forgive anyone or forgive ourselves or forgive in the first place. Not because we don't need to forgive it. It's more like the need, the word need, or watch out. It's semantics, right? The need to forgive. It's not a doing, it's a being. So the action, the outcome of forgiving itself doesn't need to happen before admitting to ourselves or admitting to being surrendering to the moment and saying that, okay, well, that person was just unconscious. That's not who they are. Eventually we get to that point in our lives. Once you start practicing all these things, and you practice presence and just surrendering to the moment, we start to feel this sort of like, oh, I sense this sort of thing that's like, yeah, this is the reality we're living, but because we're in a shell, we're in this sort of temporary state of being, this form, that's not our essence. And the way I've come to understand this is that the reason it's not our essence is because it is form. It's a creation of the formless. Our formless is our source, its source itself, it's our source, it's higher self, it's all that stuff. But we come into this life in this form, and its forms. It's like, again, it's like creating something. Eventually you can destroy that thing, right? Anything you create can be destroyed, but anything you destroy can also be recreated. So in other words, the form always changes whilst the formless doesn't. It's connected. So we're going to go into something else that I kind of, But anyway, so I wanted to tie back this into the notes I took because I think it is important. So the dual nature of being human means that there always be this constant energy, or this search energy, yes, the search and or desire for completion. So releasing ourselves from all desires is the ultimate bridge to that completion and oneness, therefore what people call enlightenment. But here's the caveat. If we look for completion itself, in other words, the outcome, we forget the moment. And therefore, we were focused on the destination, not the journey. Right? So therefore, we lose track of the path itself. Right? So that's, it's really, it's not completion. It's like if you're looking for the actual result and you're imagining in your head, great, okay, that's what imagination is for. It's like you have a goal in mind, okay, that's fine. But if we're not focused on the present, we lose quality, and there's no quality put into the work. This is why nature doesn't work that way. It takes its time. The unconscious behaviors that we've been going for the past at least 12,000 years maybe, or even 100,000 years, were the result of this sort of desire to realize it's like, oh, the outcome is the one that's important. It's the form that's important. It's the creation, the result, the end result that is the goal. That's it. That's their focus. And we realize it's like, oh, wait a second, how did you get there in the first place? Right? So it doesn't mean that we don't listen, meaning like we don't eat or anything when we're hungry, all those things, or that we forget the body. Or it doesn't also mean that we just abandon, our own, whatever, even if it's a belief, or just we forget that there's guidance and all that stuff. Everything, it's connected. As long as we're in this form, both are connected, both are real. It's just that the higher self, that's the source of it all. But we have to acknowledge that we have this human form. So for example, like, when you're hungry, you eat, right? But we listen to it and it's like, okay, is that enough? Okay, then that's good. I'm satisfied. You listen to it, you listen to the body. It starts with the body and you go, okay, that's fine. Same thing with like emotions or fears or trauma. When we have those, we listen to it by being with it, by sitting with it, surrendering to that energy that is, instead of the story behind it. Right? I don't know if you're understanding this, but it's kind of like saying a book is like in your way, but the book was just in the way, right? But was it really in the way, or was it just there? Right? Taking things personally that way is same thing as saying, oh, the emotions that I've gone through are because somebody hurt me, because of like, well, they hurt you? Is it really that they're hurting you, or that you're hurting yourself, or that you allowed it, or that you, like, this is what people have been saying, that, you don't give away your power. But what is that? Your power? Meaning you don't allow for the unconscious, fictitious conceptualization, the fiction, the delusions of the mind creating stories that even though they did what they did, they are themselves creating that because they believe that whatever their problem is, it's going to be like the book, like if it's in the way. So therefore they cause harm. It's a resistance, right? It's the ego resisting, going, okay, so here's like I'm in their way, so therefore whatever it is, I'm in their way because they don't like what I'm doing. I'm in their way because of what I said. I'm in their way because they don't like how I look. I'm in their way because I'm this. I'm so many reasons, right? So I'm in their way. It's almost like that's, and there's the ego wants to quickly react, and it automatically reacts because remember the ego is rooted in self-defense. It's a mechanism, survival mechanism. It's rooted in that, so it's automatic. But because it's automatic, it's this unconscious reaction. It's reactive, really, to something. I mean, it's not the part of the brain that is the reactiveness of the brain, its automaticity, isn't actually the thing that's causing the problem. It's the creation of the stories attached to that and saying that this is automatically my story, this is me. It's an attachment to that form. It's an attachment to the fact that it's like, oh, I created these stories, so and now I believe these stories. Belief is a very powerful thing, but belief stems from imagination. When imagination became, this is why imagination has its own, it's imagination, right? When we put imagination into reality, it's chaotic, because that's what imagination, it's in the world of fiction, it's in the world of ideals, it's in the world of stories. That's what stories are. Stories are stories. They are not meant to be, well, they're not functional in a sense that is like, what do you call this? It's not that dreams can't come true. It's not about that. It's the fact that when we have anything in a very Neptunian thing, right? It's like the world of imagination, the world of magic, the world of illusions. When we create that into reality and try to put that into reality, especially when it hasn't evolved in that regard, like it's, quantum physics is discovering that, oh, there's certain energies that's in itself reality, right? But that's what it is. So Neptune, we're not talking about Neptune today, but Neptune is one of those things where it's like that inner Neptune is that part of us, whether, is this fiction or is this fiction real? I don't know if that makes sense to you, but what I mean by that is when we have the fiction of like the story that is, let's say we have this imagination, where does that come from? I want to make it into reality because I don't accept it, that it can't just, it's just a dream. I want to make it into reality. But the ego, which believes in this fiction, meaning believes and it's attached to it, it's like, this is me, the fiction is me. I am the fiction is me. There's nothing else. Fuck everything else, right? So that's the ego, because it is afraid. It all again goes back to fear. So this is what I've been learning. That's okay. So there's that fiction that it's like, let's say I had this imagination that humans need to have tentacles or something like that. They bring it into reality and they start to experiment on people or something like that. Something very, it's like, is that, like, do you see what I mean? Is that, imagination is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be in this realm of like, sure, nothing is impossible, but when we think of when we succumb to the unconscious behavior of the unconscious ego or an unhealthy ego, what happens? It wants to rush things because, again, it's afraid of dying, because it believes in a limit, it believes in itself. It knows that it has a limit. So therefore, it must rush it. It must rush things before it gets to that limit. It's in a hurry to progress. It's in a hurry to evolve. It's in a hurry to go to the outcome results. It's in a hurry to do anything and everything, all for the sake of doing things before it ends itself, right? So that's in itself attached to form, right? So there's that, again, it's fear form, right? Fear is fear teaches us something else too. Fear teaches us that it's like, fear teaches us to be not afraid of it. Fear teaches us to go like, okay, so this is your fear. Where is that coming from? Fear is a separation. But if we start to condition ourselves, or rather decondition ourselves away from the conditioned, like same thing, right? So it's that we try to remember, okay, there is no such thing, right? But at the same time, there is the form, and we just acknowledge and accept that this is the form. But that's not who we really are. We are there temporarily. We are here in this form temporarily. It is a borrowed existence. So therefore, fear becomes less of a fear. And be like, okay, what was the fear in the first place? What was it for in the first place? It's the ego. It's an unhealthy ego. Meaning, when I say unhealthy ego, I mean like not the egoic self, but ego as in like a healthy ego understand its role in space like a cell does, and works with it and has fun with it and has fun with life. Right? And that's what I'm learning myself. I'm not saying anybody should do this, but it's like for me, this is really something that I've been learning. So, going back to the Neptune thing, now it comes to the reality that's like when there's fiction that is real. So remember earlier there was a fiction that's fictional, which is like the whole like rushing towards the outcome, the ego. The other one is like a healthy imagination, healthy magic, healthy fiction, which is fiction that is real, which is there's no such thing as limits. That ties in with the higher self. That ties in. That's a Neptune in ourselves that is tied to listening to nature, divine, higher self, the guide, source, and all of it. And everything has its own timing. So even though nothing is impossible, sure, maybe you might still feel like, okay, well, then I didn't get to achieve what I wanted to do in this life. And literally, maybe also not quote unquote achieve, but actual achieve, didn't get to achieve. That's fine. Because remember that energy is, you are not a wave in the ocean. You know, you've probably heard this many times. You're not just a pebble on the beach. You're a pebble that comes from the bigger energy. Where do pebbles come from? Pebbles are fragments of the bigger picture. And where does that come from? Like this, maybe an asteroid, maybe part of the planet. Where do asteroids come from? It comes from the same thing. It's come from the explosion. Was it supernova? Right? So it's like, boom. So it's all the same connected thing. Where does this body come from? Oh, it's from your parents. Okay, well, they made it. Okay, that's fine. Well, where did that come from? See what I mean? So it's all the energy that is all connected. Even in the physical form and material form, that in itself, the essence behind it is the process itself of being and creating and destroying behind that, meaning source itself. That is our reality, right? Again, it doesn't diminish the reality that we're in right now. This is just temporary. Borrowed existence, borrowed reality. So, that fiction that is not fiction, the positive Neptune, so to speak, the whole thing means that we are realizing just like, okay, things will come out in its own time. You know, maybe it wasn't me that built the airplane. Who cares? It was built. You know, they do this sort of, they have this sort of belief. In one episode of Xena, I remember this show, I love this show. There is this one episode where she met one who could, basically it was like, I don't know if it was tied to Taoism or something like that, but anyways, the point is not that. The point is she could manipulate energy into things like, you know, move things in their mind kind of thing, right? And that's not impossible. But it shows how being connected to something greater than your own, meaning something greater than form, so formless, she's given up that. But there was this one scene in that one episode where she said, doesn't matter who does what, doesn't matter who gets the glory, sort of. It's not about the glory, whatever it is, it's not about who does what or anything. Something will be, everything that we have, every form that we're in this form, any human, has a role, like a cell in a body. Everything has a function. Everyone has a function. And we are all contributing to the consciousness and creation and the expansion of consciousness itself, the universe expanding, because we are from that. So we're part of that function. And that's beautiful, because that means like, oh, okay, well, the your thing, you know. So it's like a color of a rainbow. It's like, okay, this is my part, this is my part. Okay, so I'm not meant to drive the plane, even though I feel like I needed to. You know, just because we get ideas, for example, we get ideas and we get these insights on like, maybe I should do this, but it doesn't come out in the way that your form, temporary, you know, temporary reality, this form, even though you didn't get to accomplish what you think you wanted, doesn't mean it's not going to be created. So it's fine, because it's really all connected. And I think we really have to get to that point where we start to not get to that point. It's not a point. It's not an outcome. It will. right? And then trusting the process. So, as my coaches would say, it's like trusting the process, and it's very true. So, going back to what I said much earlier about acknowledging all these things by being present, because in the present moment, that's where we are connected more and more, and it's practice, right? Because in form, we have practice. We have to practice because the form is so constricting, but it's not a negative way. It's just the way it is. It's how life is. It's how life is in the form, in the temporary borrowed existence of this form, the 3D. It's the universe learning of itself. Therefore, it's kind of like how things break down. It's kind of like, oh, there's that component of this. It's like how one thing, the tree grows into its vine. The branches that come out, that's the learning experience. This is Earth, this is maybe Hidar, this is Pleiades, this is this planet, whatever. Or this is this person, this is this person, this person. Doesn't matter. It's the dendritic sort of aspect of nerves coming out. That is the universe expressing of itself. It's learning of itself, expressing itself into being conscious, and then growing and growing and growing. So it's really about the body, the temporary, with body, self with self, energy and energy. I don't know if that makes sense. So microcosm and macrocosm. So this is the one that came up today, and it's just like, this wasn't automatic. I actually had to think about this, but I was like, so we have the inactive, which is doing nothing. Then there's the reactive, and then there's proactive, right? Well, in reality, what we can do is be omniactive. So this is the funny word that came up today. And I thought about it, but I was like, okay, what's the thing that's all-encompassing? Okay, we can be omniactive. So the more we listen, the more we know, the more we grow, and the more we elevate and evolve. So when I say elevate, it's not about the outcome of like, up there, I'm like, I have to be enlightened and pure. No. I mean, that is eventually where we're headed, but it's not the linear thing, right? We're already elevated. We just have to remember it, right? So there's a reason. The last notes I took here was there's a reason higher dimensions needs higher source of energy. If you look up stories on it, apparently like when you're in higher dimension, you really don't need these what you call food, the thing you need. But energy is needed. So they get a different type of energy. It's less dense. So therefore it's not like these things, like, even information and knowledge. It's not that itself. It's beyond that. It's energy itself. So I put here less meta. I meant to say meat. So this is why I think, for me, at least personally, why I really realized it's like, oh, I should cut down on meat, right? Because I was heavy. It's more dense, right? And then eventually less carb. I've also been cutting down on that one as well. So therefore, but also less material energy. So like things like fasting. And then eventually less dependence on 3D form energy. But here's the thing. So like everything else in the universe, things take time, not linear time. Well, yes, in this form, in the world of form, it is linear. But evolution, right? So that elevation could happen in one lifetime or throughout many lifetimes. So the soul chooses this, and this is why when we connect, at least for me, I've been learning this. Like when I'm able to connect and able to process things. When I say connect, I don't necessarily mean like, all these things. I'm still in this point in this life where I still go through shadow work. I still process things. I sit with it. The one thing I do a lot, been doing a lot, especially for the past year, is surrendering to the present moment and just really surrendering. And whether it means giving up for a while or giving in or giving over, doesn't matter. What I do is I do probably all of it. Because sometimes defeat is the best victory, because it's accepting, it's total acceptance, and you start to have compassion within yourself and to realize, like, oh, even though I have made that choice, that's the past, it's already done, it's over with. It's here is the reality that's always in the present moment. That was unconscious, now I'm becoming more conscious. And I think that's a beautiful thing about being human, is that in order to be conscious about things, bring awareness. It's not really about knowledge, it's more about the conscious and awareness of things in the present, like, right? We need to be unconscious first. That's part of the lessons, right, in this life. So I actually wanted to also add this thing, because I totally forgot that I was going to do this one. I'll shuffle my cards. I'm going to do a tarot reading today. It's just tarot for today. Okay. I think that's enough. I think I maybe need to switch to like thicker tarot cards. I'm not sure, but it's you know, it's practice. Okay, that one comes out. That wants to come out. Okay, that one wants to come out. Oh, okay. I think I'm sensing just 3 today. Okay. So the spread I'm doing is 3 cards only. That's fine. It's problem, suggestion, and answer. So there's the root of the current problem. So the first card that came up was this one. Four of Pentacles. Okay, so I have this traditional deck. I don't know if you've seen it, or if you've already noticed. Second one is, this is how to deal with it. Oh, this one came up before. 3 of Pentacles. This one came up also before. 3 of Swords. So all, not the basic ones, Arcana. I think it's called the Minor Arcana cards. So what does the 6 of Pentacles mean? Okay, so sorry, 6 of Pentacles. Yeah, that's right. I feel like something to do with hoarding, or probably like trying to understand things by putting things together, or kind of keeping things to oneself, and sort of kind of processing information or processing experience by oneself, and kind of standing out, but also alone, like isolation probably. I'm not really sure. That's what I'm sensing. Because it's away from the city, so isolation, yeah, distancing. That makes sense. 3 of Pentacles. This is the one where I believe, I'm going to reinterpret this and say that some sort of responsibility. I feel like there's something that is being shown, but the person is in doubt. So it feels like, again, this kind of ties in with what I said earlier about, in the previous post where I talked about, you can see that he's kind of questioning, what is this for? He's kind of doubting the information he's being given, or instructions. And so kind of just being told what to do, or feels like following instructions or being kind of in servitude, but also at the same time kind of resenting it, or the other's doubting his work and kind of figuring out like why he's doing what he's doing, and that did you do it this way, but he's like, okay. So it's something to do with feeling different. So that one was how to deal with it. So accept, okay, we'll see how that works. Three of Swords, this one something to do with imbalance, but again, this one I felt, this one today, I don't know if it has something to do with the past, but it could be past, present, future, because it's in threes. But it also could mean like triplicity of something else. But definitely like, because it's piercing the heart, so it's something to do with trauma and healing and working with the heart. Okay. So 4 of Pentacles. Refusing to budge. Oh, okay, that makes sense. It's not moving. Believing your way is the only way. Limiting your viewpoint. Controlling others with materialism. It's mind resisting change. Tight-fisted and mercenary. Small-minded penny pinching. Yeah, I've been kind of feeling that a little bit, where it's like my way or the highway. If you're sensing that, that's what I'm sensing too. But it's like, it feels like, especially now with Mercury, with Venus, Mars still conjunct, that makes sense. It's kind of like very Mars. It's kind of like, no, kind of very stubborn kind of thing. Yeah, so that's what I'm getting. So whatever you're sensing, like whatever you're going through, that is, you know, it's resistance, right? So that's what this you're probably going through. I don't know who it applies to, but I feel like if that is the current problem, that's what it is. So resistance towards, you know, other ideas, different perspectives. Yeah. How to deal with it is through 3 of Pentacles, which is like right beside this one. Professional growth, material gain, proving yourself, competent strategy, being aware of your potential, getting together with others, team spirit, recognition of skill, being obsessed with detail, too dependent on others' opinions. So here's probably the balance. Ties in with Mars and Venus right now, conjunct. Where you, even though you have your own ways and you believe in your own ways kind of thing, kind of balance and share that with others who probably also believe in their own ways. And really share with that with others, not being closed in. You know, I think that's one of the messages that's going through right now. So that's how you would deal with the problem. The resolution is through the 3 of Swords. So getting to the heart of the matter, triumph of logic over emotion, torn between 2 lovers, feeling hurt inside, discovering a painful truth, feeling let down, feeling others are out to hurt you, being cheated on, fear of losing your partner, jealous imaginings, wanting to hurt someone emotionally. So vengeance, vindictiveness, the heart, right? So the ego wants to resist. I'm sensing that the solution to this is really accepting that, you know, maybe the heart has more room for more than one thing, right? The heart has more room for than just 2 lovers. You know, maybe you might start to realize there's a benefit to and be careful of the identification of polyamory, right? Personally, I'm polyamorous, or at least that resonates with me. That's fine. So there you go. Just being open and childlike towards the whole process, and just it's your choice to remove the swords from your heart, because you can't have someone else doing it for you. And that's just gonna putting it out there bluntly. You do have the choice to heal, getting to the heart of the matter. When they say logic here, I would say this is the whole thing about shadow work. It's like seeing it for what it is. That the energy is what it is, that unconscious behavior is what it is. When we're unconscious, or when we have unconscious, our level of consciousness is what dictates our current level of action, or level of choices, or level of thoughts, or level of beliefs. Okay, so it's just part of the process. accept it, trust the process. There you go, there's those words again. So, yeah, so I want to just add that. Anyway, I thought that was beautiful. So, new concept today, omni-active. Okay, so again, yeah. So I think that's all for today. I hope that's giving you some insight, because it did give me insight. It was like wonderful. So thank you so much. I'll see you guys later.